Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, Jackie Cation here. You're listening to The Dork Forest. You know the websites, dorkforest.com, thedorkforest.com if you like a determiner. JackieCation.com has everything. Both of my podcasts, all of the stand-up stuff, the new album, links to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. But so, I think, does dorkforest.com, where you can look at old videos of different shows. Anyway, if you want to support the show, tell people about the show, review it on iTunes, thumbs it up on Pandora or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I appreciate that. You can donate. You can donate monthly. PayPal lets you do that. You can also do my Venmo if you like. It's at Jackie Cation, absolutely everywhere. And my email address is jackie@jackiecation.com, and that's what the PayPal is. The PayPal link is on jackiecation.com and dorkforest.com. And go to any of them. Thanks for listening. There's merch, there's stand-up, there's tour guide. You know, you can find out where I'm touring. This is getting long, so let's get into the show. Oh my gosh, it's me, Jackie Cation, in my garage in the twilight hour. A beautiful sunset is going to happen in an hour. Anyway, but I'm with Ethan Stanislawski. Welcome back to the show, Ethan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it. It's good to be back. Yes,
and now you run a comedy show in North Hollywood, and it's called the Avatar 2 Comedy Show at the Good Night, which is sort of a bar. I think it is. Yeah. Isn't it a bar? Yeah.
It's a karaoke bar. They do a ton of comedy shows there, including ours. We started in August of 2021, so we were one of the first shows back, and we've been going strong ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. And Ethan Stanislawski's Twitter and Instagram and all the things is at Ethan Stan Comedy, and that'll be in the notes. And I'm kind of excited. Am I excited, or am I about to have my mind blown by your dorkdom, which is Polish cinema, Ethan Stanislawski? Yeah. Talk to me about Polish cinema. What I think I told you to pick 5 of your favorite. Oh, I did, because I wrote them down. Hi, I'm a professional. I'm a professional 17th year of the Dork Forest. Welcome to the show. Where would you like to begin?
I'll begin.
Why is there Polish cinema? Because they're human and they have cameras?
Yeah, pretty much. And also they have, you know, I don't know if you know this, Poland has a complicated history. I do know that because I'm from Wisconsin. I grew up with a lot of Polish people. Yeah, it's interesting for me because my grandmother fled Poland in the 30s as a Jewish person, and she has nothing but hostile opinions until the day she died of Poland. And my dad kind of flipped on it. Well, my dad was an Eastern European historian. He was a professor in that. And he studies this, though. If you told my grandmother anything that he liked Poland, it would be a fight and it would be a whole problem. That's me giving the summary of it, the Cliff Notes version. But at a very early age, he showed me a lot of Polish cinema. There's a famous story in my family where I was like 15 or 16. Two of the directors I'm going to be talking about here, two of my favorite directors, Andrzej Wajda and Krzysztof Stanislawski. They're two, for hardcore film nerds, their names you know, but in my mind, in terms of like world cinema, they're not at the level of like Godard or Fellini, where they're like one of the first names mentioned, but both of them really belong in that conversation in my mind. But
that's interesting.
There's a famous story where like we had a family friend who was a Broadway, like a theater director and directed on Broadway and things like that. And I mentioned Kieślowski and Wajda to him, and he's like, I've never heard of them. I'm like, you've never heard of Kieślowski and Wajda? I'm 15. And I'm yelling at a Broadway theater director in New York about how he's not seen these relatively obscure Polish filmmakers. So,
right. Did you try to boy-splain to that adult man?
Yeah, pretty much. That's very much what I was at 15. And he just looked at me and
it's hard not to be, because 15 is one of the worst ages for thinking you know more than you actually.
Oh, my God.
Because there's things you know, and they may not be things that other people know, but you have no way of introducing it into a conversation that doesn't sound like you're yelling at somebody.
Yeah.
So that is too bad.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about like Marvel comics, that's one thing. But if you're talking about obscure Polish cinema, that is something that you don't usually get from a 15-year-old voice planer.
Right, exactly.
So I just remember he looked at me, he's like, Ethan, you couldn't be more New York if you tried right now. That was sort of his line. There's this intellectual kid from New York, and you are basically yelling at me about not knowing about this. But,
and when did they do cinema? Are they still working, or was it mostly the 60s? What?
Both of them have passed away. One of them, Andrzej Wajda, was started in the 50s. So he started in I think his first film came out in 1955. And he continued.
Okay, just so that everyone can, is it Andrzej? Is that right?
Yeah.
And then what? And then Wajda is Wajda?
That's correct. That is correct.
And it's pronounced Andrzej Wajda? Is that how you pronounce it?
Andrzej Wajda.
Andrzej Wajda. There we go.
Yeah.
Little Polish lesson for the folks in the cheap seats. It's a free podcast. Anyway, so Ethan, his first movie, you think 1955?
Yes, it was 1955. It was. Let me just take a look here because I want to make sure I get the facts right on which came out first. It was 1954, actually. It was this movie, A Generation, and Canal. These were both war films that came out, like in the shadow of World War II in Poland.
Makes sense.
And
because by 1955, they're behind the Iron Curtain, right?
Yeah, they are firmly behind the Iron Curtain. And it's an interesting place for Andrzej Wajda to be because a lot of his movies were fiercely anti-Soviet, very fiercely anti-Soviet, pro-worker, but anti-Soviet in a lot of, depending on his era. But that and
he still lived in Poland
for a while. Then eventually he was exiled to some extent and moved to France in the 80s. It took him till the 80s because he was a very respected figure and sort of the face of Polish cinema for a while and sort of celebrity in that world. But eventually, he made a lot of movies in the 70s that were very pro-solidarity movement. And as the solidarity movement gained traction, he went to France is the basic point. Basic.
That was nice of them to let him leave. Let us say. Yeah.
Yeah. But this third movie, which came out in 1958, I'm going to talk about that one a lot because if you were to ask me what my favorite movie is, gun to the head, it would probably be this movie came out in 1958, Ashes and Diamonds, which is, I just watched it last night to prep for this. I've seen it about 5 or 6 times, and it is still a beautiful, devastating, poetic, funny.
Black and white?
Black and white.
Okay.
All very Polish. I was watching it with my girlfriend, and there's a scene where this cabaret singer gets up and you think she's going to sing this beautiful love song. And there's a moment and it's like, we must drown in the blood of our enemies. But in this very songstress style of the 50s. Like
a ballad, like a smoky ballad about drowning in the blood of your enemies?
Yes, we must fight them back to the mountain. It was very unlike, she was like, this is the most Polish thing you could possibly But the basic premise of it is it's from a Polish resistance fighter on the last day of V-Day, on the last day of World War II, he's in the resistance, he's an assassin, and he's assigned with killing a high-ranking member of the Communist Party, and that's his hit job. And in the very first scene of the movie, he brutally shoots someone, but it's the wrong guy, so he botches the hit. Kills a guy, but it's not the right guy.
Wait, he's not killing Nazis? He's killing Soviet communists?
Soviet communists, yeah, but he's not a Nazi. He's just for Polish independence assassin.
Okay, I see. Okay, sure.
And it's a very nuanced this movie, and there's a lot of, just to get into that, there's a lot of controversy about this movie on where it stands politically, because on the one hand it is not against authoritarianism and war, but it's also anti-Soviet, and a lot of that, there was some war, some connection. There's a scene where they're looking at the bullets they have, and they're this bullet came from the Germans, these bullets came from the British. So it is a thing where people are saying it's a right-wing movie, but it's really on its own terms. It's a very fiercely independent movie. It's an anti-war movie. It's a pacifist, weirdly, movie in some senses of it. I don't know if I call
except for all the killings.
Except for all the killings.
Right. It's got a pacifistic edge. But is it mostly just a movie, sort of a Polish nationalist movie where they're just like, we want an independent Poland?
No, it is a very nuanced look. There's infighting among the independence fighters. There's basically it's a really good mix of how the personal affects the political and vice versa, and that's really what it covers, and like how one can devastate the other. So the basic plot of it is on the night of the night of World War II ends, the Nazis surrender. This guy has to wait out at a hotel to finish the job, basically, to find the right guy and assassinate him.
Right.
But while this is happening, he falls in love with this beautiful bartender at this, and it's the first time he's ever known love. And he spends this whole second half of the movie on this conflict about do I try to live a straight life, or I've committed to fight to this cause till I die. I still believe in this cause, but I also want to be a human being, and now I know the power. I know what love is now. And
right, I would like to go to Girlfriend Planet instead of being an assassin planet.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many like scenes in this movie that I think about all the time. Like there's a scene where they're just sort of fucking around at the bar with him and his like associate, and he's like tossing shots of vodka across the bar, and he lights them on fire. But it's like you're just fucking around. It's like no, these are for our, and he like names all their fellow independence fighters who've died, and it's like this weird memoriam thing. I would call them comrades, but that's comrades in arms. So that doesn't. It's since it's anti-Soviet.
But they're fellow resistance fighters during the war. Is that what the scoop is?
Exactly.
So it sounds incredibly complicated. Where it's like the war is essentially over, and now the new fight is for an independent Poland, but you've got the Polish problem in Poland itself during the war.
Yeah.
Where there were some people who supported Germany, and there were some people who were murdered, and then there were some people who just sort of stood on the sidelines and just occasionally got murdered. Yeah. And because I think Poland devastated during World War II, just run roughshod over. And then all of those things trying to come together, while some people are like, we're going to be, I mean, at least the Soviets aren't the Nazis, and at least, and we should be an independent Poland. We shouldn't be, we should just be with this. It sounds super complicated. Like they're trying to sort of do all the politics of a messy, messy end of a world war.
Yeah. And it's so messy. And there's definitely a strain of at every level, like the communists in the movie, the independence fighters are all like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point of this? And they're like, and it's just they just don't know. It's all conflict. It's all, how do we process this? And the thing about it being the end of World War II is it's set up at the beginning of the movie, but there's no like joy that the war is over. It's all in the backdrop. There's people celebrating, but like that's in the background.
The whole of Nazi Germany is a separate issue. We are only dealing with Soviet Poland and the Soviet Union, and whether or not you want to either go Soviet or not.
I don't even know if I would call it. It's just very nuanced in the fact that it's like no one is happy about the Nazis in this movie. Everyone is like, the Nazis are clearly villains. Even though the independence movement, there is some debate in hindsight about how much did they get from the Nazis in their fight against communism. But at the same time, it's like this, the dressing of the movie is World War II's over. The Nazis have surrendered. Hitler's dead. There is like a scene where they're just like casually having a conversation about completely unrelated things with the painting of Hitler in the background. Right. Because that was just Poland. It was occupied territory
stuff was still up.
Yeah, exactly.
And so who are the, like, so the director is the Andres, say his name again.
Vaida. Andrzej Vaida. Yeah.
Andrzej Vaida. So Andrzej Vaida is our director. So our actors, did he write it? Who were the actors? Was it? Yeah.
The actors are, I was looking them up. A lot of them died really tragically. It was one of those movies like Rebel Without a Cause where all the actors were cursed in a lot of ways, where like
Yikes.
So, like, one of them died trying to jump on a train, and another died in a car accident. It's like in the next 10 years after that movie. But it's weird. You watch this movie, and I've, movie nerd my whole life. I've watched this, and I'm like, there's so much Godard, there's so much Scorsese, like so many touchstones of cinema and how they handle assassins and crime and nuance in this political way.
And you see it in newer movies. You see that people have clearly watched this guy and sort of been like, that's how you would shoot. That's how you would portray that, or
and like some directors like Scorsese, I think even Tarantino is like openly sung the praises of this movie in particular. Like it's like among film people, it's like it's a touchstone, but it's like you can see so much of later movies that came out in this movie, and they've openly admitted that this is a huge influence on how they how they approach assassin movies, politics movies, and the dynamics in between.
And how's the cinematography? As I ask.
So beautiful, so beautiful.
Just amazingly shot.
Amazingly shot. I can't even begin to say the number of shots where I'm like, how did they know that would be the perfect shot when they were filming it? And there's like, there's some moments where you almost like can't believe, like, there's like a moment where a hit happens. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a 70-year-old movie.
This is we are a month and a half into every single episode of the Dork Forest being. This was at least a dozen years ago. Some of this was 60 years ago. You're going to have to know in your heart that when you watch it, you'll probably have forgotten that I said this. So go.
Yeah.
Spoil away.
Okay, so spoil. Okay, thank you. That is so freeing in this time, this era. But basically, at the end of the movie, he tries to leave and go with his new love.
Right.
But the situation is just too devastating. She's like, he has to leave and go complete this hit. And there's a shot where he's following the guy out of this hotel, this high-ranking member of the Communist Party, and who's got his own set of problems. His son, the communist leader's son, has joined the resistance. So it's like,
so there's a whole other plot. Yeah.
So he's going. Yeah, there's a few subplots in this movie that are incredible, but the communist leader is going out to rescue his son. Meanwhile, he's shot by this assassin who's been hunting him the whole movie. And like as the assassin, like there's like a shot like looking up while he's doing this, and fireworks go off because it's just like the end of the night celebrating the end of World War II. But it's like he has this devastated look on his face, like I can't believe I wanted to be in love and I just had to kill someone. Meanwhile, fireworks, and it's just like. It sounds like so on the nose, and it is, but in that it's earned. Like that movie completely earned that kind of payoff. But then that's not the end of the movie. The end of the movie is he has the choice to get on a train to go to his next assignment, like the next morning, or not join the train and just figure out what his life is. And
denouement, yeah.
Yeah, he misses the train. He runs into this guy who was like their informant who fucked up, who in another subplot had fucked up his whole life that night, by getting drunk and embarrassing everyone. And he was like, they kick him out of that, and he's like desperately approaching Mache, who's the assassin, and he runs out, bumps into some Nazi soldiers who see him with a gun and shoot him dead, completely randomly, completely like independent of everything, just the fact that he had a gun and was running away. And it's like all for fucking nothing.
This is terrifying because because it's October. I just did a Dork Forest about the Night of the Living Dead, which is a zombie movie.
Yeah.
And the hero is an amazing 1968. Our hero is a young black man.
Yeah.
He finally defeats all the zombies. The mob comes, they see him, they think he's the bad guy or a zombie, and they shoot him.
Yeah.
And so you're just like, that is such a weird way to end a movie. I don't know that's so. Did you ever see A Boy and His Dog?
I didn't see that. I've heard a lot about that. I think I've been afraid to watch that movie, like specifically.
Well, that one is just, it's another movie where. And I've never seen it. I've seen parts of it, but it's also beautifully shot. And it's this dystopian future, And the dog and the man are telepathic, and they, there are no women And so the dog smells a woman, and whatever. It's but I don't want to ruin that movie either, though it is also 1980. But it's another crazy ending where you're like, okay, well that I wouldn't have called that, because you would think he's missed the train. This is fate saying you should go back to the bartender and have some sort of life where you live on rations for the next 10 years, and but nope.
Yeah. It's all for naught. And it's really like, it's just, and like the way it's shot.
Heart-wrenching.
It's heart-wrenching, and he's just like wandering through a field with carrying blood. He was shot in like the back, and he's just like, it's so like, what was it for? And then like they cut.
The futility of war, I suppose.
Yeah, and then they cut back like at some point when he's running away to the bartender who's just like cleaning up alone, like after these drunk people are leaving the bar, and she's just like has this look of like at the very beginning when they hook up, when they do that, she's like, she's very much clear, like, we will not fall in love. And sure enough, over the night they do. And then it's sort of like this moment, it's like, this is exactly what you were trying to avoid. And now you are feeling the full effects of this. You were hoping for a one night stand, but you had this incredible romantic night with this guy. And she doesn't know she never finds out that he's an assassin, but it's just like, this is exactly, but it's just like this look of her, like just pure devastation across the board. But yeah,
right from stem to stern.
Yeah,
it's I could see how it ending like that would make people go, well, this is the futility of all of these different. When you find the purpose of the movie is that when you find love, grab it with both hands. Do not continue being an assassin. That is me rooting for love instead of the assassin. But nobody wants to see that movie because that movie is a Spielberg movie. So that's a different World War II movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about the Polish cinema, I've seen it. I've only seen parts of it, and I don't even know what they were. But they were incredibly bleak, but beautifully shot.
Yeah.
You know, it's usually, and those stuff from the 50s and 60s were all in black and white.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was because they didn't have access to color or if it was an artistic choice. And the artistic choice made them rise to the occasion because it was gorgeous.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and there was a lot of evolution. So it's like that sort of was one of the foundational movies of Polish cinema, and it's still in that realm. But Vaida himself, like Kieślowski, who I want to talk about in a little bit, worked primarily in the 80s and 90s. That was his era, and he was like an incredible person. But Vaida, and he died in the 90s, so he had a sort of more of a limited, but it's like one of those bodies of work where like, if there's just been more, like that kind of body of work. But Vaida had he worked from basically the 50s until the 2010s. Like he made movies throughout that era. I think his last movie may have been 2009. He may have done one after that, but he worked throughout the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. I've not seen all of them, but I've seen several.
Are they mostly political thrillers, or?
They're generally with a political tone, or just workers fighting to have human decency. One of his like touchstone movies is called Promised Land, and it's not set in contemporary Poland like some of his movies were, but it's set in the 19th century about the Polish person, a German, and a Jew trying to fund building a factory. And it does not.
Do they all walk into a bar? No, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no. That had to be asked. I was like, as I was saying that up. No, they walk into a factory and see workers being killed by machines and not giving a shit. That's more what it was. That's more what it is.
And that didn't have a punchline either. No. But was it? Yeah. But so he spent essentially 40 years, I don't know, 54 to 2000, you said?
Yeah, 54 to like 2009. I forget if he did a movie. The last movie I saw, like, not the last movie I've seen of his, but the last movie, his latest movie that I saw was a movie called Katsian, which I think got an Oscar nomination for foreign language film, which was about the Katsian Massacre, which was a massacre where Soviets slaughtered thousands of Polish officers in the army and blamed it on the Nazis for decades. Which is basically including, and one of the officers slaughtered was Andrzej Wajda's father. So that informs a lot of the movie. But that movie is crazy because speaking of jokes in Poland, like the opening scene of that movie reads like a Polish joke, where it's like these refugees running across a bridge, and they're trying to get away, and then at some point refugees are coming from the other side of the bridge, and they meet in the middle, and they're like, one side goes, "What are you doing? There's Nazis over there," and the other side goes, "No, but there's Russians over there," and it's just like, so they don't know what to do, and it's
right.
like a terrible, it's like a joke, but it's so like, but it's so real based on what
because Poland was indeed. Like growing up in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin, there were so many Polish immigrants that had come from after World War II, and it was the Polish jokes didn't make any sense to me because I was like, nobody's that dumb. Yeah. And why have you decided to make them all Polish jokes? And I was like, they don't have to be. And,
it's mainly just like we need a dumb. We need a dumb like this sports joke structure. We need to have it right.
There's remember they're joke books, and they used to be dumb jokes about dumb people or moron jokes or whatever they called them at the time. It doesn't matter what you call them. To quote Doug Stanhope, you can change the name of the term for developmentally disabled as many times as you want, but my friend Tim is still going to call me it when I miss the shot. Yeah. So it's not you, it's Tim. So whatever I say, but those jokes existed.
There is one of the things I've heard about this just tangentially is that when
I've weeded off. Sorry.
But when Poland. The inflection of Polish people speaking English can present as dumb if you don't know if like just the way the accent sounds to like an average American ear.
And of course anti-immigrant. Immigrants don't speak English good, and you're like, hey, meaty Magoo, why don't you keep it in your pants? How about that? Why don't you do that?
Exactly.
Anyway, so
that movie.
So his whole career was like sort of workers' rights and trying to get that out there. Okay.
Yeah, but it's a weird like he was like a very big figure in the Solidarity movement, which is a very like everything in Polish history has a very complicated and occasionally problematic situation. But it's weird because like it was anti-communist pro-worker in a lot of ways, or anti-Soviet communism pro-worker. It was Marxist, but it was basically the theory was the Soviet. Was like the communism of the the Russian Revolution was a lie, and that workers were never really at the forefront of that.
They weren't really Marxists. They didn't really do the communism. Ideal communism is very hard. It's very, very difficult. It was made possible in Cuba, but only because of sanctions. Yeah, and a lot of people almost starved to death. But 98% literacy, everybody. Hey, anyway.
Yeah, no, but it's very like he had a couple movies that were sort of like in like the Citizen Kane style. No, I'm not comparing them to like level of Citizen Kane, but they're very, very incredible movies that have the same format of like a person's trying to uncover the journalist goes in, tries to uncover the truth about these leaders of the Solidarity movement. And there's like it's like it's called Man of Iron and Man of Marble. I forget which one is which, but they're both like very much like sort of documents of workers fighting against Soviet oppression of workers. And so they're both very like fiercely political, very like everything he does beautifully shot, very well written, very tight. But it also is centered around like a father and a son. So it still has this very like human core in the center of everything he does. And which I love. Another movie of him that it was from his I Need to Go to France era is Danton, which of movies that people have heard of his that are not like film nerds, that is often the one they've often heard of because it's a French movie. It was one of Gerard Depardieu's first movies where he was the lead. He played Danton, who was the voice of opposition in the Reign of Terror, and
so another period piece.
Period piece, not directly about Poland, but directly about Poland, like of what was going on in that era, and just all the irrationality and the obsession with state control versus the rights of individuals and people who you're theoretically supposed to be protecting. And so, but they made a really interesting decision, which I realized, because they brought in a lot of Polish actors. The guy who plays Robespierre, who leads Reign of Terror, the committee, I forget what the Committee of Public Safety in that era, is a Polish actor who was one of Andrzej Wajda's staple actors, the guy he kept bringing into movie after movie after movie. And he was the lead, and I think that's his best performance playing Robespierre, where he's just this cold, sweaty, sickly, but very calculating person, who it sounds like I'm saying he's clearly never touched a woman as a standard
an
hacky
incel-y
thing.
kind of thing.
But they Danton, which is played by Jar Jar 2, openly says the rumor is you've never touched a woman. So it's he's just this really cold, calculating person. But the thing is, the actor who plays him and all his allies are speaking Polish with dubbed over into French, and all of Danton and all his allies are just speaking French. So it's a very clear
that's a weird
metaphor. Yeah.
It's a clear metaphor. The metaphor I missed. Tell me the metaphor. I'm so sorry.
It's just when you're trying to indirectly go after how the Soviet bloc in Poland is handling people, is manipulating and brutalizing people. Having all the people in your movie who are speaking Polish dubbed into French is a pretty good...
as sort of the cruelty. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That does sound. It's the thing about great cinema, and when people talk about it, they talk about it's usually drama, and it's usually these beautifully shot movies that have this heart, but are often super tragic. Is that there is often a metaphor. They are telling more than one story in the story, and that's kind of fascinating. Is the newer, the other, now I can spell his name. Kieslowski would be how I'd say it. Is that not how you say it? Kieslowski?
Kieslowski is what I say it.
Kieslowski.
Yeah. But
Kieslowski would be how he would say it if he lived in Wisconsin in the 70s. He'd say Kieslowski.
Yeah.
And then he would go out for basketball.
Yeah.
Anyway, but Kieslowski, right?
Kieslowski, yeah. But
Okay.
Kieslowski, as someone who's spent a lot of time in Chicago in my life and Wisconsin, I 100% endorse everything that has just been said.
I think of myself as pretty good with Polish names, and then I meet someone from Poland, they're like, accent's a little off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because my dad, he's an Eastern European scholar. He speaks Russian fluently. He grew up bilingual in Yiddish, so he speaks that fluently. He can speak, I think he speaks 7 languages, but he could never really get Polish because it's such a weird language. There's the one thing he's told me is there's 3 different sh sounds, and they're very different, and it's any Polish person knows the difference between sh and sh or something like that. I don't know, I'm getting it wrong, but it's so obvious to them, and everyone else who's trying to learn it is what the hell is that? So
right. Yeah, I was in Poland right before lockdown, and everyone spoke English, and it was a blessing. But they have fish for breakfast, so good for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, Kieslowski, I wouldn't say he wasn't as explicitly political. There were undertones at points of politics in the cinema, but he was a lot more about allegory and romanticism and individual stories, and more philosophical, I would say, than brutally political.
Okay.
I think what started me, my dad showing me these films, was he did a mini series in 1989, 1990, right at the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of Soviet control of Poland, called the Decalogue series. It's a mini series, and it all took place in this one apartment complex in Warsaw, with 10 different stories. Basically, there was one guy who sort of was just the guy watching over it all, but he never said a word. And it's called the Decalogue because each of these 10 episodes is loosely based on one of the commandments, one of the 10 commandments.
Oh, okay.
And so there's the running theme of it's very sort of loosely based on that, but definitely the "Thou shall not kill" episode involves the brutal murder of a cab driver and what that means for things like that.
How long is each film? The Decalogue.
each episode in the miniseries, they're about each is an hour or so, and they're
Okay.
all. But two of them were extended into more feature length films, and then they like kicked ass at Cannes and everything, and all the festivals. So the one that was Thou Shalt Not Kill is what became a short film about killing, and that movie was a big hit. And I mean, that's still like it was only like less than an hour and a half, even though it was just like it's sort of like an extended cut, basically.
Right.
But 84 minutes is essentially a feature length film. And the other one, which is the adultery episode became a short film about love.
Those are the two most popular commandments of the 10. Of the 10, those are the ones people like talking about. No one wants to talk about the one where you have to listen to your parents. Anyway,
but it's very like it's a little, it's on the nose, but at the same time, it's more about this thematic thing. I feel a lot of like what Black Mirror became in this actually, where it's like there are all these stories that are in the same universe, but they're tangential to each other, and they all. I mean, it's not as technology based, but it is about like morality and how the contemporary world you can process that through it. Like the first episode is it's the I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt not take my name in vain, and it's about this very cold science professor who like has this like very like 1989 computer, and he calculates. It's weird. It's like got Google Home tendencies. You can turn on lights in the bathroom. So he's like, technology is incredible. And he had like his son asked him about what death is, and he's just like, it's just a void. Doesn't have, but his aunt is very religious, so it's like this whole like.
So it's atheism, and he kind of loves science is his religion, and
science is this guy's religion. But then again, spoiler.
Spoiler.
He gives his son a pair of ice skates and does math on his computer that says you will be fine to skate on this pond, because it's so frozen over that it will be fine.
Guess
sure
what
enough,
happens?
Exactly.
I have to say that one time I will digress into a personal story that everyone needs to hear. When I was a child, probably 9, my sister and I were still in Sunday school. We went to Sunday school for a long time because the Armenian church services are 3 hours long. And if you went to Sunday school, they were an hour and a half. So we were at Sunday school, and they had a new Sunday school teacher. And this Sunday school teacher told us that that God would literally, she was one of these, God would smite you if you did anything bad. Then she told us a parable, supposedly, of a boy who was mean to his sister, walked to school, and got hit by a car. And Darla burst out laughing. And then we looked at each other and we laughed, and she kicked us out of Sunday school for the day. And we got sort of in Sunday school trouble. But the weird thing is because we have 4 older brothers, and it had never happened. So we're driving home, and our dad is like, how was Sunday school? And so Darla and I tell him the story, and he's like, what the hell is she teaching? And so she didn't teach Sunday school for very long. And Darla has since converted to Judaism. So very exciting. Anyway.
As someone who got kicked out of Hebrew school twice, that is a very interesting dynamic.
Twist.
Twist, yes. As someone who similarly did things on the other end of the spectrum for that.
Right. It was just, there's a lot of, and so was Stanislawski, was he Catholic? Was he like Polish Catholic?
Yeah, I
your
mean,
knowledge?
he was Polish Catholic. There's also, I mean, a weird, like, there's shots of the aunt holding photos of JP2, for instance, who obviously was
Polish Pope. First Polish Pope.
That had a huge significance, that had, again, of the many things that were not directly addressed, but definitely factoring into this worldview, that was, his presence was definitely part of that. So
it's exciting. It's like when anyone does something that you're from. So the first Polish Pope was a big deal.
Yeah. And especially for the breakdown of communism, because Catholicism and communism did not mix at that era in Poland. So it was very much like, so it was a very interesting / devastating, complicated role. Everything in Poland is complicated and messy. That's sort of what I've learned over time. Because even Poland now is a fucking clusterfuck of everything. It is it's basically we think we're a religious right country. Poland is at another fucking level of that. Right now, they're basically
the whole world has gone really crazy about they're just like what we need to do. We all agree is control women.
Yeah,
everyone agrees that what you definitely want to do, whatever happens, control women and anybody who's brown. We got to kill them.
Well, it's also a few years ago there was a story about Germans using drones to drop abortion pills into Poland. And some people in Poland thought that was an act of war. It was just it was insane.
Was it even real?
There were, as far as I know, that's not a fake story, but there were drones dropping pills, like Amazon drones by delivery, but with abortion pills. Not like drone strikers, just like the Amazon style drones, but
like delivery drones that had been ordered.
Yeah.
Like someone had ordered pills.
Like underground from a German website or something, like the German dark web or whatever you want to call it, which I don't know.
Oh, I think the German dark web exists, don't you?
I think everything dark web exists. It is weird. I will say, just again, going into politics a little bit, there is as someone who is American, there's a weird, I wouldn't call it, it's terrifying, but a weird relief that we are not uniquely idiots in the world. In the
there's a relief that we're not the worst.
Well, no, in terms of damage, we're probably the worst, but in terms of the theme of how dumb and fucking ridiculous
it might be fixable. We don't know. We're about to find out, I guess. Yeah. What the next level of what's going to happen. We're about to. Yeah. Anyway, so Decalogue.
Decalogue is I think it was released in Poland in 1989. I think 1989, 1990, but it wasn't really available to the West, or at least America, until the late 90s, which is when I was coming of age and becoming a nerdy my nerdiness was.
You went down your film school rabbit hole.
It was the perfect time for me to descend into this, and and my dad was able to just show me these, and I was just like, this is what things can be, and either this or The Mummy, I guess, but this is way better. Or this is better. This is good. This is what good cinema is.
What are you saying? I saw The Mummy, and I was doing childcare at the time, and me and the kid that went and saw it, we counted how many people died without a drop of blood being shed. Yeah, and it was in the hundreds. Anyway, so very weird.
Great ride at Universal. Anyway, but it was very influential, and I went back. He had done a series of films and then a trilogy of films, and he was very big on theming his art. He had series, and everything was duality and.
Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. Did he do 3 movies with just one word that was a color?
Red, white, and blue. Yeah, that was him. The 3-color trilogy.
Everybody told me to see those movies, and I of course never did because I can probably count on one hand how many foreign films I've seen. Sadly,
they each one of them.
I'm a monster.
No, okay. It's all good. Each one of them is more beautiful. I wouldn't call them devastating. They're more beautiful films. They're sad, but they are meditations on love and acceptance and there's a lot of weirdly mental health observations in there, and but very much how to live in a contemporary world that we live in currently. They're all, and it's a similar thing. They're all connected. They all there's the characters exist in the same universe, but they're full length films. They're the 3-color film. Yes, that's him. They were shot, and Kieślowski said if I wasn't making these in France, it would have been some other theme. So that's
sort of funny.
So he said but they were all. No worries.
All right, allow me to weed off briefly as my dog growls at somebody. Hang on. What are you growling?
No worries.
Goofus Magoo. Lie down. Anyway, so I have a dog now. Anyway, so wonderful. They are devastating and bleak.
But they're a lot. I would say
are they in color?
They're in color. Yes, they are in color.
I have some very basic questions about quality film, the most beautiful films ever made. So are they captioned? Yeah. Anyway, so
subbed or subbed, bringing it to an anime level. But
right, would you now subtitled? I think with foreign films, I do enjoy subtitled more.
Yeah,
just because it tends to be more accurate, and you can and you get used to it after a minute or two. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to. And
it just means you can't be on your phone like for 5 minutes and then overhearing things and then like, oh, okay, what is that? If you do that, you're like, oh, I've missed huge plot points that I've completely forgotten, which you can't do if you're watching.
That's why What's-His-Face doesn't want you to watch his movies on a phone.
Yeah.
Was that Scorsese? Who was that? Is it
any one of those 8?
Any one of those old guys, yeah. It's Penny Marshall would have been okay with it. Anyway, so...
But yeah. So
by the way, I am talking. It is we're at like 45 minutes here, so I just want to say, Ethan, I am talking with Ethan Stanislawski. It's at Ethan Stan Comedy, and on all the socials. Do you have an Ethan Stanislawski website?
Yes, it's ethanstanislawski.com.
Catchy. Do you have film? Do you have films on there? Do you do any film?
I have reels. I have my credits. I have my acting credits. You may have seen me in a Zelle ad recently. That was a thing I just did. So
that's exciting.
But yeah, you can see my stand-up clips there, and you can see my credits as well, my acting, my reels, and all that. So that's my writing.
I just want people to know because this has been fascinating, and I don't want to slow you down either. So, since I started the slowing, so okay, so Kieslowski, 3 colors in the 90s.
That had sort of more like names of actors you would recognize. If you're like a Juliette Binoche, like Julie Delpy, like actors like French actors of that era who you would probably know if you knew if there were French actors to know in the 90s, you would know them.
Okay.
So, but they're all like it's hard to describe like just what they are because they're basically. Red is very much about a love focus, and it's about a couple and all that. I'm sort of blanking. It's been a while since I've seen these, but it's Juliette Binoche, it's Julie Delpy, Irene Jacob, but they're all there's like basically it ends with them. Like each movie has the color as a theme, not just in terms of how it's shot. Like the movie Blue has a lot of blue in it. The movie Red has a lot of red in it. The movie White is very, in terms of the color scheme, of the camera work, but it's also like thematically relevant, like to what's happening in those films, like on several levels. Like there's a scene where in the movie White where he tries to shoot himself and he fires blanks. Blanc in French
is white.
There you go. So there's a lot of and he's also impotent, firing blanks, and there's like
shooting blanks, sure.
There's things like that throughout the film, and I think Red was the last of the 3 that was released. But there's basically a scene at the end where it's the survivors on this horrible crash. I think it's like a boat crash, and it's just like you see the photos of all 3 of them, and it's like you couldn't have ended this trilogy any better. Like this moment of like where it. If you watch these movies in sequence, you're like, oh, this is so, everyone's more beautiful than the last. And then you have this perfect symmetry moment at the end where it's like, where everything just clicks. And in Blue, there's weird stuff about the state. And if I were to, like, it's not really political, but there are like political moments in it. Like there's a scene at the end. Is it that or no? It's White. I'm all 3 of them blend together. I'm sorry. These are the ones I haven't seen.
Are they available streaming?
I hope to God they are. I know. I was looking at this. Ashes and Diamonds. You can watch on Amazon. You have to sign up for one of those like bullshit add-on things, but you can get
but you can get 7 days free
for that.
Yeah.
And Danton's on Criterion. I know that.
I did an episode about Criterion, and I remember the choices that the Criterion Collection makes are often, just because we want to fix this, we want to recover this movie and make it as beautiful as it was.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, Promised Land is on that Amazon if you sign up for this thing.
Is
Ashes and Dying.
Criterion a streaming service, or does the Criterion do a?
They do have a streaming service. It's subscription based, but it is incredible and worth. Not everything that is in Criterion is on there, but it's great. But a lot of Criterion movies. This is just a hot tip. I don't think the movies I'm talking about are this, but if you have a public library card, there's an app called Canopy, Kanopy, that if you link your library card to it, you get a ton of Criterion movies for free. And
that's amazing. Canopy with a K. Okay.
Canopy with a K. So that, just for everyone listening, that is like, preach that to the rafters. That is a wonderful service. And hopefully, I know at the LA Public Library you can use that with your card. I hope your local library
check out your local library, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And they may have some of these movies to rent on DVD if they're not available for streaming. So there you go.
Right. And so for the last 10 minutes, I'm curious about the current situation in Polish cinema. Mm-hmm. How does it look? How does it feel? Yeah.
There's been a couple movies in the last decade or so that have really been beautiful, and I think the movie Ida won the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar. So that,
how do you spell that?
IDA, like Ida.
Okay.
But it's just Ida is how it's pronounced, and it's I think it's about I forget the exact. Again, I haven't seen this movie in a few years, but it's about a nun looking for either her mother or someone's mother. I forget. I think it's who was also I may be confused. I may be looking for someone's mother who was a nun. I forget the exact format, but I remember watching it and being absolutely blown away by it. And it was like, again, so there are some beautiful movies there. There was another one. I'm going to look it up now. I apologize for.
Oh, no problem. It's there's so many great foreign films that I know that I would like, and some of them are just very beautiful and very sweet. And here's my Jackie Cation question. Do you know any great Polish cinema of a movie that's very beautiful and very sweet? Or do you mostly know stories that are super bleak?
I would say the Three Colors trilogy at its core is sweet. There's a lot of it's romantic. They're romantic movies. All three of them have a lot of romance, and they're built on love. They're not built on, like, Vito is a genius, but he's very much fierce political fervor. Kieślowski, pretty much across the board, anything you get from him, there will be this, romantic, very empathetic towards humanity outlook on life. Even another movie of his is Double Life of
that's what we're talking
which
about.
is very much in that realm of like a woman with this dual life, and even though it ends on a very note, throughout it all, it's very like. It's just he's a romantic Kieślowski, and it seeps through everything he does, even when it's veiled in that Polish bleakness. So that's the way I would do that. Blanking, there was a French movie, and it was a love story. Blanking, I can mention it later if you want to put it in the notes. But it came out. It was a big deal a couple years ago. It was a French Polish movie. There's a lot of collaboration between France and Poland. It was about a couple. It was a French woman and a Polish man in love, and it's like their story throughout the decades. And he eventually is sent to the Gulag because it's including the 80s, but then their love is reunited throughout it all. It's killing me that I can't remember the name of this movie. I apologize. I should have looked this up beforehand.
Is it called The Innocents?
Is it? I think
Les Innocents? With Agnes Day, a 2016 French film directed by Anne Fontaine, which features Or the Double Life of Veronique, My Polish Honeymoon?
Was what I was talking about earlier. I think this is... I'm blanking on it.
My Polish Honeymoon.
No.
That sounds something.
I'm going to look this up, because I think I would remember if it was a female director.
Oh, no. The Innocents is not about that, because not even the nuns are spared of war horrors.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't watch that. That sounds very, very haunting. But anyway...
Another director to look up. I'll admit I haven't seen as much of her work as Agnieszka Holland. She actually directed episodes of The Wire much later on. But she did. She did Europa, which is now. Then she sort of moved over to U.S. cinema a lot. But she's someone who is again a beloved Polish director. She did a movie called Fever and Interrogation. Her her movie before. Speaking of what we were just talking about, was To Kill a Priest was a movie she did. So that was so she did a lot of great movies in the 80s. She, like I said, she later directed a lot of movies in America, and I think she did The Wire too, if I'm not mistaken.
That's kind of amazing that there was directing of The Wire.
Wow. As I feel like this is a weird note to get close to
wrap up the episode,
because I don't like recommending his movies, but early Polanski is also in that realm.
Boo. I saw Chinatown not a long time ago, but it was before I knew who he was or anything, and I was like, this guy seems a little bit of an elbow squeezer. And someone goes, oh yeah, he's worse than an elbow squeezer, Jackie.
Yeah, he is worse. If you can pirate and not give him money, and you are morally okay with it even on those terms, the movie Knife in the Water is
beautifully shot. Amazing.
Again, don't give him money, but if you want to see good, like how to make a movie without giving the person who made it any credit, pirate A Knife in the Water. That movie is something else.
Usually we don't encourage it, but here we go. He's gross.
Yeah.
So try to avoid giving him dime one. Yeah. And I know all of you Rangers, you know how to do it. That's what I know for sure, is that you know how to use your powers for evil. Yeah. And in this case, it's not evil. But if you want to, and just, so that's Polanski. But I'm glad that there's more sort of women directors coming out, and then they're also directing The Wire. That's kind of hilarious. That's great.
I think actually Ida, it may have been the same director as the movie I'm talking about. Let me look this up, because before we go, I don't want to leave without like an amazing movie recommendation.
That would be neat with a new movie from Polish cinema.
There it is, Paweł Pawlikowski. I could be pronounced this is wrong, but he did Ida. He won the Oscar for that, I believe. And then the movie after that was Cold War. That's the one. Thank God I remember that. Cold War. She did in 2018. Okay. It's a collaboration between Poland and France. It goes over decades, and it's about this love among the intelligentsia of both worlds and how it conflicts with how their worlds fall apart individually, how their worlds fall apart politically, but their love conquers things like that. So Cold War is the movie.
And look how dreamy that guy is. That Polish director. He's all handsome and cleaned up.
It would have destroyed me if I had left this podcast talking about this topic without remembering the name of that movie. But Cold War.
There's that guy.
It was again nominated got a Best Director nomination, not just Best Foreign Language Film nomination. He got a Best Director Academy Award nomination, as well as cinematography. And
it's Pawel and then Pawlikowski. So Paweł Pawlikowski in Wisconsin accent.
None of these are easy to Google. That's the thing with Polish.
That's why I spelled it, because you could rewind. Because that's the magic of a podcast, you guys.
And I'm sure there's some nerd, Ranger watching this movie, listening to this, who at some point in the last 5 minutes was screaming Cold War.
Right. Just shouting at their iPods. No, they're not. They're shouting at their iPhones. And so, Ethan Stanislawski, it has been an hour. This has been a delight. This has been a great kind of rabbit hole of Polish cinema, and it's at Ethan Stan Comedy. You have a show at the Good Night. Is it monthly, you said?
Monthly, yeah.
But if you go to at Ethan Stan Comedy, you can find out more places where Ethan is doing stand-up. And also Ethan Stanislawski, spelled in the notes.com. You can see his reel. You can see all kinds of stuff. And thanks so much for doing the show.
No, I really appreciate you being on again. It's always fun when I get to talk about this and let this fly. Because this topic in particular, I'm like, I would want to talk about it. People are like, all right, Ethan.
Oh, this is a place to come.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God! Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?